Hi, in this video, I am going to be going over the DAE export settings for newer versions of Maya. Now, I made this video, the same video about 6 years ago. I don't know when the audio quality got messed up. I don't know if it happened during upload and I never noticed, or if it got corrupted on some server by YouTube at some point after I had uploaded the video. So I don't know if it's always been horrible or just something happened. But yeah, it's almost unbearable to listen to. So anyway, so I figured it's been 6 years. There have been a few minor changes here and there. And so I thought I would go over them, the settings and some new information, and so that you know what are the appropriate settings. Okay, let's see. Well, before we start with the settings, you do need to know something. Okay, now this is the MayaStar avatar, but it's the same size as the Linden Lab avatar, bento. And one of the things you need to know is that when Linden Lab created the avatar and created the skeleton for a Second Life, nobody at Linden Lab knows for sure, but I've talked to Lindens and they all believe the same thing is probably what happened. You see, the avatar and the skeleton and the appearance slider settings they all used Maya. And so they're all based on Maya. And so what had happened is, by default, when you open up Maya, it's in centimeters. Okay, so if you were to go to preferences and go to, is it working? Where is it? Let me find it. Hold on. There we go. So by default, the working units is centimeters, and Y is up by default. Second Life Z is up. That's why this has been set to Z. But we left it in the default centimeter working units simply because that's what Linden Lab based everything off of. And it wasn't until they decided to make Second Life working units meters that the avatar got scaled up 100 times or 10 times bigger. It's either 10 or 100. I can't remember. Anyway, so the MayaStar uses the same, and so all the provided files by Linden Lab, for people to use in other programs such as Maya and Blender, the avatars are all tiny, okay, because that's the size they were originally made as. So, all the morphs for the avatar body, the body itself, the skeleton, everything was based in centimeters. And so when they were working on it here, it looks like it's a normal size, but they didn't realize that, oh no, they're actually working on the avatar super tiny. Okay, so when I recreated MayaStar with the sliders and everything, it was just so much easier just to start with what they gave me and what they were using in Maya, and then recreate the sliders. And so, so the avatar in Maya is tiny. Now, don't be tempted to change the linear working units. You could but it may have some unintended consequences when you go to export out. And so I would just leave it at centimeters, because that's always going to be the default. Maya's always has a default as a centimeter. Okay. So that's one bit of information you needed to know. Let's see, another bit of information you need to know is that every single, you can export out multiple meshes with one DAE file if you really wanted to, but the individual meshes that are in that DAE file, most people just export one mesh in one DAE file. But if you can export out multiple meshes in one DAE file. But each individual mesh, whether it's being exported out as a single mesh in a single DAE, or if you're exporting out multiple meshes in one DAE, the individual meshes themselves, the maximum number of bones they can be rigged to is 110. Okay, is 110 bones. Well, the avatar body itself, the bento body, the full body, in Second Life has like 159 bones. So if you select the whole skeleton and it's a bento skeleton, you're going to and rig it, the clothes to that skeleton, even if you're copying the weights off of a mesh body that is not rigged to 110 bones, you'll end up with way more than 110 bones, and you won't get the include skin weights tool in the upload window. And so that's why in MayaStar we have, you select your mesh and you remove bones, remove unused influences. So if you copied the weights off of an avatar body onto your mesh, the body most likely isn't rigged to more than 110 bones. So even if you did your initial rigging smooth bind of your mesh before you copied the weights over to all the bones in the skeleton, and then copied the weights over, your mesh would have more than 110 bones, but then you do remove unused influences, and that will get rid of all the bones in the skin cluster that have no weights applied to them, and that gets you 99.9% of the time gets you down below that 110 bone limit. If you were used to using, before you bought MayaStar, using dev kits by other designers, and just copying the weights from that and rigging your clothes that way, most likely they didn't have more than 110 bones to the dev kit body. And so if you were used to using it that way, you might all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, I bought MayaStar and it's giving me more, and I'm not getting the include skin cluster on the upload options when I try to upload it Second Life. That's why, because you were used to using a skeleton that had less than 110 bones when you were using their dev kits, and now when you're using MayaStar, it has all the bones, because MayaStar isn't just for clothes, it's for people who want to make facial hair or something to do with the face, facial piercings or whatever, or even mesh heads. And so it has a lot more bones than just your average dev kit body. Okay, so the other thing it's good to know is that one of the new developments is that when you open up your MayaStar panel with MayaStar 7, this menu panel 2.0, when you go to export out your mesh clothing or whatever you've rigged and you want to export it out, and you click Export Selection, it sets all the DAE settings for you automatically. Okay, but there are times when you might want to change those settings, but just in case. But yeah, this normally would just set all the export settings that you normally need just by clicking your mesh and then clicking Export Selection after removing unused influences. I would always remove unused influences before you export out the first time that mesh with Export Selection. So that's something new. So that will take care of, pretty much all the problems you're having, but sometimes some people still have problems with like the scale of the avatar. So so it depends on, so one of the settings that you might want to change is the scale, but let's go over the other settings. So if you do want to change it, you can do it one of two ways. You could either go to Export Selection and click the options here, and well, actually you can't, because it doesn't give you all the options. Okay, it doesn't give you all the options. So what you want to do is you can go File, Export Selection. This Export Selection is the same Export Selection that's in MayaStar Export Selection. So either way you get to it. Okay, So we're going to start off from the top. Okay, so these are all just the default settings. You can't even change these. And you go to include options. Again, you can't really change those. Include. Okay, so there's where you can very first start. You might have some of these turned on. I usually have them all turned off. I usually have triangulate turn off. Let's see. This is one that is different. Usually it's convert NURBS surfaces to NURBS by default. You don't normally have to change that unless you want to use NURBS. And you can rig NURBS, and by turning it into interactive display mesh, it will automatically turn the NURB into a polygon. That is rigged. If you rigged the NURBS, it's hard to believe it. You can actually rig NURBS. And sometimes there are cases where you might want to try that. Okay, now we get to animation. Now, if animation is normally turned on, and so if you're going to make changes to a lot of these, you want to have animation turned on. But before you export out, you turn it off. Otherwise, all it does is it just adds more stuff to the file, the DAE file that you really don't need. So it just makes the DAE file bigger. It takes maybe a little bit longer to upload. And so, yeah, this is just the default for your big animations. I turn all these off. Deform model. Okay, the only one you really have to be worried about is, one, make sure deform models is turned on. But you want to make sure skins is turned on. Skins is the skin weights. If this was turned off, you wouldn't get any skin weights in your DAE file. So make sure that is on. And see, if we had animation turned off, these would be grayed out and you couldn't turn them on or off. Blend shapes, you don't really need blend shapes because Second Life doesn't support DAE blend shapes or morphs. So you can leave that on or off. It doesn't really matter. But see, if we turn it off and then we turn that off, see, then these are still selected. Let's see, blend shape options. Again, we're not going to be exporting them out anyway, so you must make sure those are turned off. See, if we turn them on, you could turn that on, but I would leave them off because you don't really need them because they're not supported. Okay, cameras, turn off cameras. You want to turn off lights, make sure lights are turned off. Audio, you want to make sure it's turned off. Connection. Include children and input connections are fine even though they're grayed out. Let's see. Then we get down to units. By default, it's set to automatic. And this is where you can change the size of your mesh. And so if your mesh is too small, you can try changing this to meters. Or if it's too big, you could try changing this to centimeters when you upload it. So just try playing with these two. It all depends on the size of the avatar when you created your mesh. Let's see. So this is where you change the size of your mesh. If it's coming in too small, you can come in here and change this. But I would leave automatic turned off. In the past, automatic sometimes causes the DAE when you export to crash, but that hasn't been true for a couple of years now for newer versions of Maya. But just in case, I find it always best to turn off automatic so I can control how large or small the mesh is going to be. Okay, then I always put Z up because that Z up is what is up in Second Life. If not, when you res the clothes on the ground and not wear them, it would come where it's like laying down on the ground and on its side. So putting Z up, when you res the clothes or whatever you're rigged on the ground and not wear it, in Second Life, it'll be right side up. Okay, these you can turn on or off. I've never really gotten any benefit from the warning. It'll give you warnings all the time that don't actually mean anything. I've never got a warning that meant anything. So I would turn off Show Warnings Manager. You can leave generate log data if you really want to. So if you really, really needed to look at those warnings or something that happened, you could go into the log data and read it then. So you can leave that on if you really want to. Let's see. Then we have, here's Collada, and single matrix I always leave on, and this is triangulate. Okay, I usually turn triangulate off. That way when I export out my DAE, if I need to import it again, you get this nice clean mesh that has not been triangulated. It looks just like a regular mesh that you were working on. So it's a good way that if you lose something, if you lose a file but you still have the DAE that you uploaded to Second Life, if you have triangulate turned off, you can import that DAE back in and act as a backup copy of whatever you're working on. And like I said, there's two different places you can tell it to triangulate, so I would turn them both off. To export. I try to remember, I think, let's see. Okay, so so those are all the basic settings. And I'm just going to example. Okay, and I already have an example there, so I'm going to overwrite it. And I usually make sure I export out at least one mesh doing that, and that way it will save those settings. The only thing, if I remember right, is that when you export out of here, it always triangulates. So now that you know the settings, you don't necessarily have to use this to export out selection. It is very convenient, but if you find that it's triangulating your stuff and you want to make sure it's not triangulate, then you just export out. Usually either export out, using export selection there, or MayaStar export selection, same exact thing. So those are the settings that you want to use when you export out your mesh clothing or whatever rigged item that you're exporting out. I'm going to put it on pause and I'm going to jump into Second Life. Okay, so here we are in Second Life. There's one more place that you can change the scale of your avatar. I mean, not your avatar, your mesh clothing or whatever you rigged. So you go to Build, Upload, Mesh Model, and here we got our DAE. Okay. So if you go to Upload Options, you can see here the scale. Now that's pretty tiny. Okay. So you can change this to 10, and that's more reasonable. See, you're making it 10 times bigger. Okay, so you look over here at the dimensions, and these are in meters. You can go 100. So this is probably more realistic. Is 100 times bigger. And so you can change that. And so if you find that it's exported out in the wrong size, you can compensate here for it by changing the scale. Rigging. Let's see. Did you see we have include joint positions, include skin weights are not grayed out. So that the mesh top that I had there was rigged to less than 110 bones. And this is Firestorm, obviously, and so it will give you a list of all the bones that it's rigged to, and obviously that looks like a lot less than 110 bones. And so, yeah, if you're getting include skin weights grayed out, it means most likely if you look over here, you're rigged to a lot more than 110 bones. And so, awesome. So that's just a basic overview on the settings. I'm trying to understand why well, the old video was like 42 minutes long, so I'm not sure. I probably rambled on a lot because I tend to do that, but I probably went in on a lot of other subjects, kind of having to do with rigging and stuff that I can't remember what I went into because I didn't watch the whole video lately. So anyway, so yeah, that's just the basic settings for exporting out your rigged mesh. You can, when you go to rig your mesh clothing, let's see. Okay, so if we go here and go here, and see it's a scale of 1, 1, and 1, so that's the size that is. And if we change this to meter scale, doesn't change the working units. They're still centimeter working units, but it shows you what how big the avatar actually is. And just like in Second Life, the clothes got bigger. So if I were to detach skin on this, you notice that the top got tiny again to fit that avatar. I think it's 100 times bigger. Let's see, 100. Yep, it's 100 times bigger. So now if we were to freeze transformation on this to make this 1, 1, and 1, and we were to rig it to all the bones and copy the skin weights and do all that fun stuff, when we export it out, it would the mesh would physically be bigger, and so you might have to at that point, depending on your export setting, if you had it export to centimeter or meter, when you exported selection out, you might have to change this to meters. Okay, so you might have to play with that a little bit to figure out what works best for you. And I forgot when I exported this last time, I forgot to turn off animation. See, animation just makes the file a little bit bigger than it really needs to be. So it's just, you know, helps keeps your DAE files a little bit smaller, so they upload a little bit quicker, and you're not adding any information that doesn't really need to be there in that file. And so and I myself find it easier to rig when it's bigger like this, because then when I go into adjusting the skin weights and you need to zoom in real close, you have a lot more leeway because you're not working with something so tiny. So a lot of people, including myself, like to rig when the avatar is in meter scale. It just means that it's, like I said, it doesn't change the working units. The working units still are centimeters. But the avatar has been scaled up to be in meters, the same size that it is in Second Life. And so, you know, so awesome. Alrighty. I think that just about covers everything. I can't really think of anything else that to go over. So awesome. Well, I hope that really helps somebody out there, and I apologize so much about the horrible audio quality. I don't know when that got messed up. I don't know if it got messed up during the upload process, or because I had to edit it before I edited the video before I uploaded it, so I heard the audio. So I don't know when the audio got messed up, if it got messed up on upload, or somehow the file that, like I said, YouTube had on their server got corrupted, or what. But yeah, that was, I couldn't even listen to it. I could hardly make out what I was saying, and it's my voice. I should know my voice pretty good, so it should be easy for me to understand myself. But yeah, I was having a hard time even understanding myself. I had to listen very carefully. So I apologize to all those out there who watched the video and had such a hard time. I'm going to take the video down and post this one up in its place. So awesome. So have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.